Indiana Disability History Project, Indiana Institute on Disability and Community, Indiana University.
The need for advocacy was great. Ronelle Johnson.
Okay, so when I was born hearing. And I would start hearing and speaking a little bit until I was 18 months old. And then one day I was just sitting watching TV, and my mom kept calling my name, and she thought I was ignoring her. She came around to see me, and she said, did you hear me calling? And I was like, Mom, no, I didn't hear anything. And that caused her the beginning of the concern. She took me to the doctor. And of course, back at that time, we were called dumb and deaf. We were called, yeah, it was a long time ago. Now we don't have those negative labels anymore. So my friend's parents told my mom, well, did you know that there's a deaf school in Indianapolis? Mom was like, what, really? Because we had no idea about it until then we drove to the deaf school, and I started seeing that the environment was different than the mainstream environment. The deaf school had dorms at their school. They had a particular system. They had environmental things for us to look at, just the outside. And when I was 7, that's when I started picking up more language, more signs, and started becoming more ingrained in the deaf community. Back then we would use simultaneous communication. When you do that, you're speaking as well as signing at the same time. But as I grew up, I was always involved in sports, football, basketball, volleyball, just anything. Yes, I lived in the dorms in the deaf school. That was really like my second home, living there from when I was age 7 until I graduated. And so I could socialize, and we have dances, and we have brother and sister, alliances, and the environment. The classrooms looked like, well, the teachers were deaf. Some were hearing, but they would sign fluently, and all were required to sign. One of the speech and hearing teachers, would use their voice, but that's about it. That's all. But everyone was required to sign. But a long time ago, it was still home signs. It just wasn't much. Then when I got full access into the deaf school, that's when I really became involved. And I decided to be involved in the deaf community because their needs for advocacy was great. Well, let's back up a little bit. When I became the president, at first I was the secretary of Indiana chapter of the Black Deaf Advocates, and then I was promoted to vice president, and then I became the president. And so I had a 2-year term. That was a huge experience for me. So, for example, I would show people, encourage students, hey, I'm a deaf person. I have a position in a presidency called Freedom Club. We established that for the deaf kids, and it didn't matter what color they were. It was about identification and feeling good about yourself. So it wasn't just about black deaf, but any deaf people, any deaf student could join. As I finished the presidency, I became the Midwestern Regional representative. So I traveled into several different states. That was a fantastic experience as well. And I would collaborate with them, the 7 states that are in our region, and then we would take information from there to the national president. So I served that for 2 terms as well. And so, but really what I'm deeply involved in, all of that is what brought me to who I am now. Okay, so ICBDA actually started in 1991 with Donald Tinsley. He established the group at that point. And I joined much later in 2005, much later. because I wanted to go and see what's everything look like. And the purpose of it was mentoring children, reinforcing positive values, expression, being able to express themselves. So, for example, a person who can't express themselves, then they need an advocate for them to understand these are your rights, and I'll go with you to share with the community or anyone about what your rights are. If there are systems that need to be changed, and every person is different, but many of the people in our group have experienced suppression and opposition because of being Black and deaf.
Music, Redwood Trail.
Produced by Indiana Institute on Disability and Community, Center for Health Equity. Funded by the Indiana Governor's Council for People with Disabilities. Copyright 2021, the Trustees of Indiana University.